guys, so for this video we're going to be talking about what is a vampire, and more specifically, what were vampires to begin with, and then what did they become. When you think of what a vampire is, I'm guessing you probably picture something like this. And yeah, that's a very modern take on what a vampire is. It's beautiful, piercing, bright eyes, pale, you know, something very attractive that lures you in and drinks your blood, but that's really not historically accurate. So for us to understand what a vampire is, as in what they became, we're going to have to figure out where each of a bunch of individual aspects about them came from. We're going to go ahead and start with this one. Alright, so drinking blood. It's probably the most common idea about vampires. It's persisted throughout all of the mythos. It's still around in modern times. Where did it come from? Well, in Romanian culture there were these creatures, they were called strigoi. There were two types. One that was kind of like a skinwalker, normal person, until at night and they would go feast on the life force of people. That's not the kind we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on the undead strigoi, because these are the kinds that most likely influenced your modern idea of the vampire. So basically, these strigoi were people who had died, and then bad things would start to happen. Crops would fail, loved ones would get sick, people would just start passing away. So they would go check on the recently deceased, and they would find a corpse that, instead of looking all decayed and old, it would be puffy and bloated, red, with a little bit of blood leaking down their face. And to them, this was a sign that that person had rose and recently feasted. Now, anyone who has any understanding of medicine would know that because they put them in boxes, they could be preserved for a while, so actually the decomp would not occur without all of the, decomposers to eat the flesh. So that's actually really common now, but back then they didn't know that. Now we're going to talk about something else that's just as old as the drinking of the blood and traces back to the exact same source. Now, death by stake, it's also a very common trope for vampires. I mean, you walk up and you just stake them through the heart, and that's that. They turn to ash or whatever, but that's not really how it happened, not originally. See, back to the legend of the strigoi, to keep them from rising from the grave, it was common for them to use a stake, and it didn't have to be wooden, metal, anything, and they would basically hammer it to the bottom of their casket, and it didn't necessarily kill them, it just kept them from rising again, and to them, they thought that that would keep them safe. So yeah, it's a little different than the modern idea, but I mean, it's obviously the root of our modern stake 'em and kill 'em idea. Okay, so now we're going to get into something that's not clearly as old a part of the legend, but it's probably one of the most popular ideas, period. Alright, so death by sunlight. Everybody knows that a vampire couldn't be sitting out here with me right now because, the sunshine would kill them, except that that idea is really not as old as the legend itself. I mean, as far back as Bram Stoker's Dracula, sure, Dracula wouldn't come out during the day, he chose to travel at night, but there's never any indication the sun would actually kill him. It could weaken him, but not kill him. So you're probably wondering where the idea of vampires dying in sunlight came from. Well, it actually comes from the movie, I forgot there for a second what it was called, because I've never actually seen it myself. Nosferatu, that's right. It's an old German film, and while it came out before the Dracula movie, it takes pretty much all of its influence from Bram Stoker's Dracula book and takes it and puts it in a German setting, and to avoid being sued, the ending was changed so that instead of the normal ending of the book, Count Orlok's just gets hit by some sun and he just disappears and that kills him. And as far as we can tell, that is the origin of the vampires dying in sunlight. So you're probably wondering if I have any other interesting tidbits to throw in there about vampires, and you're sure right I do, because this next one is another really popular idea that has no basis in the legends or facts at all. So yeah, here it is. Okay, so you're probably thinking that Count Dracula is one of the most famous vampires of all time, and you'd be right, in pop culture he is. But the thing is, when Bram Stoker wrote his book Dracula, the original title of the vampire was going to be something a lot closer to vampire or vampire, and he didn't actually come up with the name before he came up with the idea. No, he was reading a book about the history of Wallachia, and he took some ideas that he got from there, and he took the name because Vlad Tepes Dracul, or Dracula, was a fearsome figure, and he named his character that. So now people think Dracula, they think vampires, when in reality he was considered a hero in his own country because he defended them against, I believe it was the Turks, and yeah, he is a local hero to them, even though he was quite a sadist. He would put people on stakes, which is ironic because people think stakes are the only thing that can kill vampires, and he was putting his enemies on them long before he was even considered one. And yeah, he might have been a bit of a sadist, but there's no indication that he drank blood, nor was he an undead creature. He was just a ruler. Alright, so now we're going to roll into another fun aspect that's kind of older than the Dracula legend. So garlic as a vampire deterrent. That's actually pretty much just as old as the Strigoi legend too. It's one of the earlier aspects, and basically they would put garlic on their doors to bar entry for the Strigoi into the house, much like early Europeans would put lamb's blood on their doors to keep death out. It's similar, and somehow that evolved into people wearing garlic to deter the modern vampire. So as you can see, all of those individual pieces came together to tell you what a modern vampire is, and most of it's fictional. I mean, it's all fictional. Obviously, the Strigoi was based off of a misunderstanding of medicine, but so the vampire legend, it started with the Strigoi, and then Bram Stoker's novel made them more popular, and you know, Nosferatu added a little bit here, and then as pop culture went on, little bits and pieces grew, and now we have the modern idea of the vampire, and it's very fascinating, something I've always been interested in. And yeah, so I hope this helped you understand it a little better. I mean, it's quite an interesting topic for me, and go ahead and comment if you want me to cover anything else like this, because it would be very fun for me to do. And yeah, like, subscribe, and have a good day.